Wind and gravity is pretty hard to visualize in Minecraft because neither of them actually exist in Minecraft. But it is possible to make things that replicate the effects of both of these forces, especially with smokestacks and flags and banners. These are things that are actually rather difficult to build if you're not used to building with organics. But if you understand the process and the physics behind how it would work in real life, then you can understand how to build them consistently well. So let me just walk you through these here. We'll start with flags because they're kind of the most universal and they're the easiest to understand in a way. Basically, what a lot of people end up doing with flags is knowing, oh, they've got to go straight out, and they just... There we go. That's the flag that they make. And then they realize, oh, this is kind of ugly. And then they kind of understand that the wind is supposed to be affecting it, do that. And then people usually just give up with this and be like, yeah, you know what, it's good enough. So here's how I approach making flags like this one. The first thing you need to know is that wind is not going to make the flag... Okay, there's two competing forces. The wind, which is keeping the flag up, and the gravity, which is forcing it down. So you're not going to have it go straight across because those two forces are very variant. They change a lot. There's going to be a lot of movement. So let's try just starting here. And this is the first mistake. Building just a line down one side does not help you. Now, there's a partial line down one side here, but I have one back here. I have one in the front. I have one that wraps around to the side. You need to blend it on every edge of this flag. So I'm gonna cut these two away, do that. And then basically what you want to do is you want to take this base shape that you got at the front, and you just want to make it kind of flow in and out and in and out for as long as you want the flag to go. And there's my first draft. So this is what the flag looks like at the moment. It's not too bad, however, it is a little bit awkward at some points. So this part I felt a little chunky, so I'm gonna do that. Maybe block that off. Maybe I'll try that, but that feels a little off. Changing that a bit. That looks a lot better than it did before, in my opinion. I think that looks much better. And then you want to check the other side. Does it look good from the other side too? I think so. I think it looks pretty neat from all angles. So this one, you can see, has a motion where it's a lot more up than this one. This one went down a bit and then went back up, as you can see. And this one is pretty much just pushed up. Now, gravity shouldn't actually change in this idea, so it is getting the same constant downwards force, but depending on where it is, maybe if it's higher up, if you have a flag that's higher up than some of the others, it gets forced up a little bit more because the wind up there is stronger, or something like that. You can make little details like that in your builds where some of the flags are pushed a little bit higher, or if they're smaller flags, they get pushed up a little bit easier. Basically, you're just trying to make layers on top of each other that are irregular shapes that just go, oh, here's one layer, and then you go out, and then you go out, and then at a certain point you go back in, and then you go back in, and then you go back in, and then you're done. And you just kind of make the in and out, and it could go in and out again. It could have more rapid in and out, could have in out and out and out and out and out. But at this scale, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. But there you go. That's the basic idea of a flag. It's just you want it to curve a lot. You want it to flow with the wind because it's a light material. It's a fabric or something along those lines. It shouldn't be resisting the wind very much. It should be going with the wind. Same with banners like this, big custom banners like this. A little bit, very similar to the idea of a flag, just kind of sideways. Or I guess up and down. So you have the same idea if it goes in and then out, and then it's just kind of done. And it's a very similar idea to the flags. The only major difference here is that it is vertical with gravity. So especially if you're putting it up against a wall. So if you have a wall, say, in this area. So if I just build a quick little wall for demonstration. Now, people don't necessarily think about this part, but the reason that this part might be flying out from the wall, if it's up against a wall or something, is because the air is ramming itself in between the wall and the banner and then pushing the banner out, because it's not going to push against the wall. I mean, it is going to push against the wall, but the wall is much better at pushing back. The banner will just move out of the way. So it's pushing itself in between the banner and the wall, and so it's going to flare out against walls most of the time. Unless there's a head-on wind, in which case it's just going to get smushed up next to the wall. However, that is pretty boring, and you probably shouldn't build that. Smoke is a little bit different. Obviously, because it's a gas, you're not going to have to worry about drooping as much. It's pretty much always just going to go up at some angle. If you don't have any wind or very little wind, you can have it just going very, very easily up. Also, I think there's bats spawning in here now. Is there bats spawning in here now? There's bats in there now. Okay. With this, I like to use many different variations of stained glass. So I like to go from black to gray to light gray to white. Pretty simple transition here, but you just basically want to fill most of it with stained glass, with the glass panes, sorry. And you barely want to touch the glass blocks. And then you're just very slowly but surely making your way up. And then eventually at the top, you're just going to want to split it up into little different bits. So you're going to have some areas that are detached. And then you'll look for flat faces. That looks a little bit flat, so maybe I'll put that there. That looks a bit flat. And there you go. Now there's one without much wind. It's pretty much just kind of going straight up and then just kind of dissipating at the top. You want it to start dense, get lighter as it gets less and less dense. This had a very similar idea. It's just going sideways because the wind is blowing it in that direction. Now, I've built all of these in an actual base, and it's not just about the actual build itself. It's about how you position them in the world. So let's see what they look like on the EchoCraft server. First is flags. Now, these flags were built a while ago, and they're a bit smaller than the flags I was demonstrating with. So here's kind of how they look in this scenario. Scenario. You'll notice that they're both going the same direction. This because in my vision of how this area works, the wind is coming from this direction, flowing through this mountain valley, and then curving out like so, either towards the water or towards here. And I have built all of these wind features to accommodate this. So these flags are both moving in relatively the same direction. This one's a little bit bulkier, so it just kind of goes down at the end. This one's a little bit lighter, so it goes down but then flares back up a little bit. And I also have some banners down here, which you can look at. There's one on either side of this bridge, and I keep consistency with the wind pattern by making the one on this side go in to the center of the bridge and having the one on this side flare out away from the bridge. It still goes in a bit, but it does flare out. Over here is an example of a banner against a wall that I was showing you. This is up against the tower, and it goes out and then back in and then out again because the air here is coming from this direction, ramming itself up against the wall and forcing the banner outwards. And then it's basically creating a ripple effect. So you're getting pockets of air here. You get a pocket of air here, and then it sucks back in towards the wall and then flares back out again, and then has that kind of motion. I've also got smoke up here. The smoke here is also following the wind pattern. Granted, it's going slightly further diagonal than these because I had the idea that the wind, once it passed this part of the base, it would redirect out in every direction a little bit less. So once it hits here, it's wrapping around this section of the base and going in this direction. So it wraps around and then it hits the smoke, which I'll show you without shaders, has the same black to dark gray to light gray to white gradient, and then it dissipates at the end. You can see it's a lot less dense as it gets closer to the top. Now, the other little thing with fabrics that I like to show you is fabric that's like a canopy or something. And this is a little different for me because mine is filled with snow, so it is a lot more weighed down than it is just under gravity. So I don't have a lot of the wind blowing up the canopy a little bit because it's filled with snow and it's being weighed down a little bit more. If I didn't have the snow here, I might consider having a ripple in this canopy where the wind is bubbling up a little bit and it's kind of pushing it up, resisting its mass. You can also do the same thing with trees. However, I am also not as good at doing that with trees. As you can see, my trees over here are pretty much static. I haven't bothered to mess with the wind of the trees a ton because I'm just getting good at making regular trees. So that's about all I wanted to put for this one. It's a pretty short episode, but I think it's an important topic to talk about, and I hope it helps you understand the dynamics of these moving objects in the air in Minecraft. Because in real life, you just put a piece of fabric up and it does it on its own. You don't have to think about how it looks, but if you want to recreate that in Minecraft, you really have to think about how these things work. And it's tough, it's complicated. So I hope you learned something from this. If you did, please consider subscribing. It really helps me out. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.